The night was thick, oppressive, with clouds hanging like the bruised underbelly of a storm that never came. Joe walked through the darkened streets, the gun in his hand feeling like an extension of his own festering soul. His boots crunched against the gravel road as he moved, a hollow man driven by rage and betrayal. His breath was shallow, but his mind, it was racing, twisting in loops of doubt, jealousy, and anger that had consumed him whole. He had seen her, Marie, laughing with another man, their faces so close, like she had forgotten all the nights they spent together, like he was nothing but a ghost. That laughter, that easy smile, it cracked something in him. It snapped. And now here he was, the weight of the revolver pressing down, its cold barrel tucked under his coat, heavy as his guilt. The wind howled as if it knew what was coming. It cut through him, whispering his name, telling him there was no going back now. Joe turned the key in the lock, his hand shaking, the wooden door creaking like a scream swallowed too soon. Inside, the dim light from the single, flickering bulb cast long shadows on the peeling walls. The air was thick with the smell of stale cigarettes and something else, something rotten, like the decay of love that had turned sour. And there she was, Marie, sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes wide when she saw the look in his. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She knew. She knew. He could see it in the way her lips trembled. Her voice barely a whisper, like it was already being suffocated by the violence that lingered in the air. But Joe was past words. He couldn't hear her anymore. All he could hear was the dull thrum of blood pounding in his ears. All he could see was red, spreading like a stain across everything he thought he knew. He pulled the gun from his coat, the metal glinting in the dim light. The world slowed, sound muffled. His hands felt detached from his body, like he was watching someone else do it. He raised the gun, aimed it at her chest. "Joe, please." Her voice cracked, but he couldn't stop now. He couldn't turn back. The shot rang out, deafening, cutting through the stillness like a jagged knife. Her body jerked once, her breath coming out in a sharp gasp before she slumped forward, collapsing onto the table, blood spreading across the faded wood like ink on wet paper. The silence afterward was worse than the shot. It was thick, suffocating. Joe stood there, his chest heaving, the gun still smoking in his hand, but all he felt was cold, a chill deeper than any wind or storm. He stared at her body, but it was like looking through a fog. He had killed her, his Marie, the only person who had ever truly loved him, and now she was gone. And for what? He couldn't breathe. The room was closing in around him, suffocating him with the weight of his own actions. Joe turned and stumbled out into the night, the cold air biting into his skin like teeth, but he barely felt it. He was a walking dead man now, a hollow shell, his soul eaten away by regret and madness. He could feel it, the darkness. It clung to him like oil, suffocating any trace of the person he once was. Mexico. That's what he needed. He had to get to Mexico. There was no law down there, no hangman waiting to loop a rope around his neck. He could disappear, melt into the shadows like he never existed. But no matter how far he ran, he knew deep down there was no escaping what he had done. The ghost of Marie would follow him, haunt him. Every road he traveled, every night spent alone in the dark, her face would be there, in his dreams. In every quiet moment, her eyes, those wide, terrified eyes, would pierce through him. He stumbled into the night, his mind fractured, the weight of his guilt pressing down on him like 1,000 pounds of concrete. The road ahead was long, the desert vast and unforgiving, but it was nothing compared to the desert inside him, barren and broken.